worried about screening. The second misconception is that if you're feeling great, you're feeling healthy, you can put off that screening. We want people to know that even if you don't have a family history of cancer, you need to make sure to get your screenings. Less than 10% of cancers are considered hereditary. That means 90% are not. And the other thing is that when you're feeling great, that is the perfect time to get screened. You want to be sure and get your screenings before signs and symptoms appear. So you want to be able to catch a cancer early. If there is a cancer there at all, you want to know about it as soon as you can.
So with that said, you don't have a family history, you are feeling great. So now is, you say, the best time to get that screening. At what age, how frequently?
It's going to depend on your gender and your age. It's all dependent on the different screenings that we have. The best thing to do is to take a look at a resource like preventcancer.org, and you can do a personalized screening plan that'll tell you exactly when you need to go and get screened, so you can have conversations with your doctor about that. The good news is that even though people distrust the system, many do trust their own doctor. And more people are saying that they're having conversations with their doctors about the screening that they need, and that's great news. We have a resource that you can bring with you to your appointment and say, hey, look, this is what it says I need to do. Let's talk about that and how to do that.
Excellent. Jody, thank you very much. Jody Hoyos from the Prevent Cancer Foundation. We appreciate you taking a few moments for us.
This is CBS News, New York.
We're joined by meteorologist Tony Sadiku, and please tell us when it warms up.
I think by the end of the week, you'll find it a little easier to be outside, but it's crazy looking at that shot in Central Park where the backdrop looks like spring and then everybody's bundled up like it's January. So that's what we're in for today. So make sure you get ready for it. We got freeze alerts in effect. Temperatures now still sub-freezing. By the way, it doesn't matter where you are this morning in the tri-state area. You're sub-freezing. 31's the air temperature in the city. Wind chill is down now that the breeze has actually picked up a little bit over the last hour or so. So it's almost a 10-degree spread in what it actually feels like. So that's the challenge this morning, is trying to stay warm. So it's going to require a little extra effort to bundle up. Where'd you put the gloves? Where'd you put the scarf, the hat? Nice and warm today. And it makes a difference. Nutley feels like 23 degrees. Your Middletown, New York feels like the 20s. And so does Sparta, by the way. So whether you're in Jersey, you're in the Hudson Valley, you're in Connecticut, you're on Long Island, wind chill somewhere in the teens or low 20s with that north wind blowing. Good news is I think we can shift the winds around by later today, and then tomorrow, all of a sudden, we can start to dial up a little bit of warmth, even though it's not going to happen in a hurry. But there's that gusty breeze, double digits, making a difference. Freeze warnings, we've got those extended an hour now till 9. Doesn't include all 5 boroughs. You get into Nassau, U2, Eastern, Essex, Union, you're going down Middlesex, Monmouth, Ocean, Mercer. All of you have these warnings. And again, everywhere is freezing, but those of you where the growing season has begun, that's where that's triggered a freeze warning. By the way, freeze watch for tonight into early tomorrow, because we could do another round of this type of chill. Maybe it's a couple of degrees warmer, but it's still going to be cold enough that it can be harmful for sensitive vegetation. So I would consider that again tonight. There's your day planner. Sure is going to be a good looking day, but it's just not going to necessarily feel as warm as you'd expect it to feel this time of the year. So average highs at the top of the 7-day. Did you notice that? Highs near 60 on average, but it's like 10 degrees shy of where it should be, still below average tomorrow. And then it's just about above average from there, just in time. Friday, weekend, next week, right now is trending warm.
Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said the U.S. military's job in Iran is done for now. He made the comments during a briefing from the Pentagon with the Joint Chiefs Chairman Dan Kane a few moments ago. Comes on the heels of the announcement of a 2-week ceasefire with Iran. Hegseth also said Iran was no longer a threat to the United States.
Operation Epic Fury was a historic and overwhelming victory on the battlefield. A capital V military victory. By any measure, Epic Fury decimated Iran's military and rendered it combat ineffective for years to come.
President Trump posting on Truth Social, I agree to suspend the bombing and attack of Iran for a period of 2 weeks. This will be a double-sided ceasefire. The deal spearheaded by Pakistan halts the U.S. offensive in exchange for Iran opening the Strait of Hormuz. They will have control of it, though. President Trump also said Iran has put forward a 10-point proposal, calling it a, quote, workable basis to negotiate. Despite the deal, the United Arab Emirates says today its air defenses are firing at an incoming Iranian missile barrage. So we'll see how long this ceasefire lasts.
Caught on security video, a New Jersey family's beloved dog taken from outside their home. And the family believes this woman and child are behind it. Andrew Ramos spoke to the family, who's asking that their dog be returned, no questions asked.
Heartbreak for a New Jersey family captured on Ring surveillance. Their 7-year-old Shih Tzu Yorkshire Terrier mix, Rocky, seen being chased by a child outside the family's Clifton home this past Sunday. Then a woman emerges from a black SUV where the pair corner the dog, swiping it off the back porch.
I was upset, angry.
This is breaking news.
And good morning. Thank you for joining us. I'm Chris Raggi.
And I'm Cindy Hsu. We are coming on the air with some breaking news. A major twist in a case we've been following for decades. Gilgo Beach serial killer Rex Heuermann has changed his plea.
Just moments ago, Heuermann pleading guilty to 7 counts of murder. He evaded arrest for more than 30 years, living a seemingly normal life in Massapequa Park, Long Island, commuting to Midtown, where he worked as an architect. Online search history and DNA evidence from a discarded pizza box led to his arrest back in July of 2023. Now, he was initially charged with the murders of 3 women, Melissa Bartholomew, Megan Waterman, and Amber Costello, later charged with the murders of Maureen Brainerd Barnes, Sandra Costello, Jessica Taylor, and Valerie Mack.
And up until today, he's pleaded not guilty to all the charges against him. Today in court, Heuermann admitted to killing another woman, Karen Vergata. He will be sentenced on June 17th.
Now, the plea marks a significant shift in a case that's gripped Long Island and drawn national attention for over a decade.
Jennifer McLogan has covered this case for years, has the latest from court. Jennifer.
Good afternoon. This is huge, a case that has haunted Long Island since the bodies of the first so-called Gilgo 4 were discovered on Ocean Parkway back in 2010, wrapped in burlap in a shallow grave. We have some resolution. On the 4th floor of this criminal courthouse behind me, Rex Heuermann, the Massapequa Park architect living a double life, admitted to all 7 murders that he was charged in, plus an 8th that he was suspected of. This is saving victims' families from the trauma of listening to all this, and taxpayers from a long, protracted trial. Now, he entered court. He was no longer on crutches. He sounded matter of fact and even confident when questioned by the judge. He gave his name. He identified himself. He leaned over a little tiny bit. Yes, Your Honor. Yes, Your Honor. I am Rex Heuermann. I am now 62 years old, etc. It was really chilling as the district attorney, very composed, battered the questions toward him. Did you do this? Did you do this? Yes, yes, guilty, guilty. All 7 people. Now, just to set the scene in the courtroom, it was standing room only. The courtroom was packed. There were 24 family members. You could hear a pin drop. It was very tense. We had 2 overflow courtrooms, court officers everywhere, overflow courtrooms filled with, yes, media, but also podcasters and interested public. The next situation right now, my colleague Carolyn Gussoff is up there gathering sound because Rex Heuermann's ex-wife, Asa Ellerup, who wanted to hear her husband claim he was guilty, she never believed it, will speak. She will read a statement. Her attorney will answer questions. The defense attorney for Rex Heuermann will answer questions. And then this afternoon, hundreds of reporters and photographers who are here will then travel westbound to Brentwood, Long Island, where the district attorney will hold a long press conference detailing everything, and we will be able to hear from the family members caught up in this tragedy. And obviously yesterday afternoon, we're aware that one of the family members' children, this is the son of Valerie Mack, filed a lawsuit against Asa Ellerup and her daughter, Victoria Heuermann, claiming they must have known about this, and because they have participated in documentaries in which they were paid, that they have ample funds now to answer this wrongful death lawsuit. Chris, Cindy?
Jennifer, having covered this case for so many years and seeing Rex Heuermann since he was apprehended, of course not plead guilty like he did today, to see this seismic shift in this case that has garnered such national attention for so many years, I guess if you could, were there audible gasps in the courtroom from the family members that were there? We talked about his ex-wife, wanting to hear it from his mouth that he was guilty, never really fully believing that he was responsible for this. Take me through some of those elements, if you would.
Audible gasps for sure, quiet sobbing, no outbursts that we heard. But this was the first time we heard Rex Heuermann's voice. And I mentioned before that he sounded matter-of-fact and confident, but he's missing teeth. And he never wanted to open his mouth at all. And you could hear him sort of lisping, yes, yes, Your Honor, you would hear as he came through. No longer this kind of arrogant big bully. He looked more, like a timid has-been. Why did he do it? Now that's the big question. Hopefully in the next few hours we'll get more of those answers. But was it to spare his wife and daughter and stepson? We don't know. Is it that he didn't want all of those shameful, sadistic details to come out from his manifesto that he'd written? They were going to go through those hook, line, and sinker and show what a brutal, sadistic killer he was? Or was he just wanting to get out of solitary confinement and thinking that maybe prison will be best for him? Of course, the judge at the end said sentencing will be laid out at a future date, and he will be receiving life in prison with no possibility of parole.
Hey, Jennifer, you and Carolyn have been covering this case for so long. I'm just wondering, when you heard that he was going to plead guilty, what was your reaction?
It was just stunning because originally when we were privy to that shocking day of his arrest, where no one expected that at all, he kept maintaining through his attorneys, no, he wanted to go to trial. And we kind of thought that he loved the attention, and why wouldn't he want to go through with it? So it was a little curious. We thought maybe it was health reasons or, as we said, privacy reasons. We don't know, but it was definitely a big surprise when he decided not to go through, because the trial was to begin in September. They had the dates all set. All of the discovery had been gone through. And, you know, as we said before, it's saving taxpayers from a huge protracted trial, and obviously his family, all of those, his family, and then all of those victims' families. And we know that there were 10 bodies that were discovered, but 8 of those have been linked to him, and we still have 2 of those Gilgo Beach cold cases that are still out there in the wind, as they say.
All right, Jennifer, stay with us. We're going to come back to you and Carolyn Gussoff, who's there on site with you in just a couple of moments. We just want to show this real quickly from the courtroom. Some images of Rex Heuermann, this from moments ago. As you can see, Jennifer describing the scene, missing some teeth, but audibly hearing from him the first time as he pleaded guilty to all 7 counts that were levied against him with an audible lisp due to missing his teeth. Again, this is just a case that has been such a huge question mark for so many families, for so many law enforcement officials for so many years now. Finally hearing from the guilty party himself, guilty to these 7 murders and admitting to an 8th. And we will, of course, have more on that coming up as well.
And we saw the transcript from what was going on, from the questions and how Rex Heuermann answered, and to go through each person.
His MO for each of these.
And also, you know, how he did it. And he said strangulation for many of those cases.
As you can see, we've got 2 experts with us to break down this case even further. Rodney Harrison, the former commissioner from Suffolk County, who has a very big role to discuss in this. We thank you for being here.
And for legal analysis, we're joined by trial attorney Rich Schoenstein. Thank you for being here.
Rodney, let me ask you this. We were talking about this before. When you became commissioner in Suffolk County, you said it was job 1 to bring this case back to the forefront and get some answers for these families. And now this comes to fruition right now. Let me ask you what you're feeling, knowing that this man has now pleaded guilty to these murders.
Yeah, so it is a little bit of a emotional satisfaction, a bittersweet moment. You know, one of the difficulties in a situation like this is you don't get to bring the family members that have lost a loved one to the individual that was killed, and that's where the difficulty comes in. But being able to bring some type of comfort, knowing that this case is behind him, knowing that he will never see the day of light again, he'll be behind bars for the rest of his life. There's a level of gratification. Yeah. It's good to see that the creation of the task force was able to accomplish this goal and bring an individual to justice.
And what do you think the break in the case was? Because we think the first disappearance happened in 1993. Yeah. We don't have a person of interest until you came on board and we had a task force. What was the break?
You know, there was an investigator that was assigned to the state police that really did a phenomenal job. You know, she actually went through the case files. I identified one of the roommates of one of the victims, Amber Costello, and did a little bit more of an engagement. Once we were able to learn that one of the clients was an individual that drove a green Avalanche. Mm-hmm. They had access to a database that Suffolk County did not have, and they were able to put the pieces of the puzzle together and take a look at, are there anybody that resides in either Massapequa or Central Manhattan that has a green Avalanche? And she was able to attach it to Rex Heuermann, and that was the case. That was the part of the case that really got us going forward with who Rex Heuermann was.
So when you get that information and you say to yourself, when you do the background and you look at this man, he's an architect in Manhattan. I mean, how do you draw the two? And what was it like that day when you were able to finally narrow it down due to the DNA and say, this is our guy, and that day when you decided to go and get him?
So just take a look at prior serial cases. Serial killers come in all shapes and sizes. There's no actual way of taking a look at somebody and saying, hey, yeah, that person's a serial killer. So that's one thing we got to take in consideration here. Regarding the process of getting to a point, to getting to an indictment, my partnership with Ray Turney, the district attorney out there, putting the pieces of the puzzle together, everything from subpoenas to getting DNA matches, reaching out to the lab to make sure that everything was in place to go through a judicial process to put Rex Heuermann in the corner, allowed us an opportunity to say today, checkmate.
You know, Rich, I want to switch to you. So we now know sentencing is going to be in June, many life sentences. Where do we go from here? And do you think any other civil cases are going to come forward? Like, you know, Valerie Mack's son trying to go after the wife and the daughter.
Well, let me take those questions in order. So, to cut to the chase, he's going to spend the rest of his life in jail. There's no question about that. He's going to have multiple life sentences without opportunity of parole and probably additional sentences of 25 years to life. And they're going to run consecutively, not concurrently. He is never getting out of jail. So there will be sentencing proceedings. There may be an opportunity to hear from the families of the victims, which we do in that process, but it's not going to matter much. He is in jail for the rest of his life. There will be civil litigation. There is civil litigation. There was a suit filed the other day on behalf of one of the victims. They're going to try to get at, I don't know if he has any assets, but there's some speculation that his ex-wife may have some kind of rights deal and may have some assets coming to her. So they're going to try to bring her into this proceeding. And usually when the criminal proceedings come to a conclusion, that's the time for civil proceedings to go forward.
There was some talk reportedly of some six-figure funds for both the mother and the daughter due to a documentary that they participated in. Let me talk about the 8th woman here that he is admitted to, not charged with 7 counts of murder, but that 8th, we'll still have to wait on that because he hasn't been charged with that murder yet, correct?
Right. I don't think he can technically plead guilty to something that hasn't been charged, but he did admit it in open court under questioning today. And I don't know procedurally if they're going to go ahead and file that charge and convert it to a guilty plea or not. But he has conceded that he murdered these 8 women.
Got it.
Rich, thank you. We want to go back out to the courthouse because Carolyn Gussoff has come out. Carolyn?
Yeah, hi, Cindy.
Can you tell us what happened in court, please?
Yeah, so we just came out. I mean, the mood was very, I would say, anticipatory. Everybody knew what was going to happen. In fact, the judge quipped, you know, that it was like the worst kept secret what was going to happen. And then it was just very rapid fire. District Attorney Ray Tierney himself asked Rex Heuermann a series of questions.
Carolyn, I'm sorry, we have to jump in here real quickly. Rex Heuermann's ex-wife, Asa Ellerup, is speaking right now at the podium. We want to listen into that and her attorney.
They did in solving these crimes.
Thank you.
Well over 3 decades. First and foremost, our hearts are with the victims and their families. They have suffered unimaginable loss, and nothing said here today can lessen that pain. Let me be absolutely clear. We just heard in the courtroom, Rex Heuermann and Rex Heuermann alone is responsible for these horrific crimes. Any suggestion that Asa Ellerup or Victoria Heuermann were involved is irresponsible. They have no knowledge, no involvement, or any connection to these heinous acts. The evidence that's been put out in the courtroom simply does not support any other fact pattern. Mrs. Ellerup and Victoria accept today's outcome without question. She and her family have cooperated fully since day one with law enforcement and will continue to respect this legal process as it comes to a conclusion. This situation is deeply personal and profoundly painful for Ms. Ellerup and her family. She never wanted to believe the man she was married to for 27 years, the father of Victoria, would be capable of committing such heinous acts. like so many others, she is still trying to process what was just revealed inside that courtroom, and she has to remain strong for her family. On behalf of her family, she's asking for privacy, compassion, and understanding as she now navigates these circumstances which nobody could have anticipated a little more than 3 years ago. Today is not about Asa. It's not about Victoria. It is about the victims and their families, what we just stated, have suffered unimaginable losses. And this family will continue in cooperating with the District Attorney's Office and law enforcement in the pursuit of justice wherever it may take us. Any questions?
Can we hear from Asa?
Yeah, no, we surely will hear from Asa, yes. Just want to know, she's not going to answer any questions. She's going to read a statement, but if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer. Okay. She's not going to answer questions. She's going to read a statement that she prepared last night. She's not going to ask any questions.
Can you come to the center back where you are?
Okay, right up. Awesome. Just step up. Slow. Okay.
No questions?
No
Okay.
questions.
My thoughts and prayers are with the victims and their families. Their loss is immeasurable. And the focus should be on them at this time and moment. I ask that you give some privacy to my family as they navigate through this very difficult time.
How did you not see what he was? How did you not see what he had done? You were living with him.
Sir, the District Attorney's Office has thoroughly investigated these crimes, okay? It has been proven.
You were living in the same house with him.
She was away.
What were the
She was
signs?
away each and every occasion. We've answered this 1,000 times, okay? You guys have the bail applications. You have the investigation. Yeah, that's it. There's no questions, okay? Thank you. There's no questions being asked. None.
As you can see, Heuermann's attorney stepping in, not allowing her to answer any questions. It looked at first as though she may, but he was quick to quell that. We'll bring our guest back in. Rich, let me ask you, you're hearing from that attorney right there. If you had to grade how he's handling this so far for his client, what would you say?
Well, I would give him good grades. There's no way she should be answering questions. She's just been named in civil litigation. So she gave a very short statement expressing her thoughts and prayers for the victims and their families. That's fully appropriate. She shouldn't comment on it further. She may get deposed. She may be a witness. She can't be talking about it.
Yeah.
Commissioner, I have a quick question for you. With this dual life and the question that people were saying to her, how could you not know? What have you experienced in the past about somebody living with a killer and not knowing?
Yeah, so yes, he was definitely living a double life, and her role or her knowledge of exactly of his actions, I still have questions. I'm going to be very, very, very frank with you. Was she complicit? Was she in any ways knowing what her husband was doing? God willing, we'll find out down the road. But the one thing that I will share is the investigation is not over. The task force still needs to stay intact. You have to take a closer look. The bodies started missing in 1993 to 2010. Were there other individuals that we have not discovered that we need to be able to identify and hold them accountable as well? So a lot more work needs to be done. Was she part of it? Time will tell, but it's a very, very frustrating situation, but a level of comfort that I'm sure the families of the loved ones who lost their lives so brutally are going to be able to sleep tonight.
Have you spoken with members of the task force that are still actively investigating to see what the next step is?
So I had an opportunity to engage individuals that were part of the task force. They actually moved on, but they still have a say-so regarding what are going to be the next steps. Listen, the district attorney, Ray Turney, did a good job after the initial arrest, making sure we were able to continue the investigation and attach all of the discovered bodies that were on Ocean Parkway, as well as other locations to Rex Heuermann.
Yeah, so now that he's admitting to an MO of strangulation using burlap and whatnot, do you now go back and just kind of revisit other cold cases that where any type of connection could be made, as you said, to other cases that maybe existed out there?
the investigation's ongoing.
Yeah.
You know, it definitely shouldn't stop. You know, is he going to be forthcoming and share that, yeah, he has committed other acts of violence to other sex workers? Listen, create a stronger task force. Maybe even take a look at going off of Long Island and maybe even making it a statewide task force. Take a look at sex workers that are missing throughout the state and see if they could maybe potentially attach it to him or somebody else who's another copycat that may be doing these types of heinous crimes.
Right, and Commissioner, we had been talking earlier, it's not just sex workers' bodies or unnamed, bodies in this area. I mean, it could be throughout the country.
It can be, and yes, also take a look at Rex Heuermann's past. He used to travel down to South Carolina. He had a timeshare out in Nevada, so he might have went up hunting upstate. Mm-hmm. So there's definitely a need to follow his path, his trail of, where he used to visit, where he used to go, be it recreational or personal, and take a closer look at were there missing sex workers in that vicinity also.
Let me pose this question to both of you of how common it is to see something like this, a man who has basically been defiant in not admitting guilt, but now all of a sudden guilty on all 7, admitting to an 8th. I know we heard from Jennifer before that this is going to spare taxpayer money. It's going to spare some of the families hearing some of the details, but there are also some families that wanted some more answers and that we've already heard from that are not necessarily happy that he's not going to have to admit to see him and actually testify. Is this uncommon for a case like this or a criminal like this to change his mind and just plead guilty?
No, it's not uncommon. We just saw it in the prominent case out in Idaho where that defendant has pled guilty, right? Yeah. So this happens all the time where there are defendants who face really an insurmountable time at trial and decide to plead guilty. And you were never guaranteed that you would hear from Rex Heuermann. If there had been a trial, he didn't have to testify. It's unimaginable that he would have testified. He wasn't offering an alibi defense or a self-defense defense. So you weren't going to hear from him in any event. You're never going to get a satisfactory explanation as to why a human being would do something like this.
And just very quickly, we don't know what the plea deal was, what's on the table. Very quickly, if you could tell us some things he might have gotten through this.
Yeah, it seems like maybe some of the charges were dropped and there aren't going to be additional charges. I haven't seen the details of the deal, and I really want to scrutinize that. Sometimes there can be concessions made about where somebody will be incarcerated or the circumstances of their incarceration. I don't know if any of that was offered. I don't know what was on the table for this. Hopefully not too much, to tell you the truth.
It's not going to matter much because he's, as we mentioned, not going to see the light of day. We want to pause to say hello to viewers tuning in now to our noon newscast.
We have been following breaking news. Gilgo Beach serial killer Rex Heuermann just changed his plea in a Long Island courtroom, pleading guilty to 7 counts of murder and admitting to an 8th murder. Good afternoon. I'm Cindy Hsu.
And I'm Chris Raggi. We thank you for being with us now on the air and streaming on CBS News New York. Let's get right to our breaking news as we continue to follow these developments. More than 30 years after his first murder, Rex Heuermann, a 62-year-old architect from Massapequa, pleaded guilty this morning to killing 7 women and admitting to killing an 8th.
Now here's a look at his victims. They are Maureen Brainerd Barnes, Melissa Barthelemy, Amber Costello, Megan Waterman, Sandra Castilla, Jessica Taylor, and Valerie Mack. And Heuermann also agreed to plead guilty to the death of Karen Vergata. He has not been charged in her murder yet. We want to take a live look outside Suffolk County Court in Riverhead right now. We're waiting to hear from several key players in this case, and we'll bring them to you live as it happens.
But we want to begin with our reporters who have been covering this case since the very beginning, Carolyn Gussoff and Jennifer McLogan, who are live at the courthouse in Riverhead for us right now. Ladies.
Yes, Chris and Cindy, really a stunning moment, a historic moment in court. We just got out, even though it was expected, to hear from Rex Heuermann, to hear his voice, to hear him saying guilty, guilty, guilty 7 times as he changed his plea, really in a confident, strong voice with no emotion, in a packed courtroom. It was standing room only. It was filled not only with media but law enforcement who have worked on this case, this enduring mystery for decades, and also family members of Rex Heuermann and several dozen family members of the victims, and there were tears in court. We didn't get the details that you sometimes get with.
Carolyn, I hate to do this. I hate to do this.
Okay,
Carolyn,
go ahead.
I'm so sorry. I know this is the second time I've had to cut you off, but we want to go to Rex Heuermann's attorney right now.
No, I see him. I know where you're going.
Okay, we'll get right back to you. We'll get right back to you.
Enter a plea of guilty. Now, as attorneys, we've counseled him, we've advised him, but that decision is ultimately up to the defendant. He controls his case, and that's his prerogative, that's his right, and that's what happened here today. When Rex decided that he wanted to accept responsibility and didn't want to proceed to trial, from a defense standpoint, we then pivoted and did our best to protect his interest. That included the fact that he's going to cooperate with the Federal Bureau of Investigations, the Behavioral Analysis Unit, and as you heard the district attorney, there will be no further prosecutions in regards to these 8 victims. The district attorney's office of Suffolk County did an excellent job. I'll commend them. They deserve all the accolades. I've been reviewing this case for over 2.5 years. I can't express to you, and I know we've talked about it on many different dates, the volume of evidence and discovery. They did a great job. They really did a great job of gathering the evidence, they went down hundreds of rabbit holes. And when you look at the amount of evidence and you connect the dots, they really did a great job. And I'm talking about the investigators, the detectives, their experts, the assistant district attorneys. So I'm sure that the families of the victims are very grateful to the district attorney, and the people of this county should be as well. This was an unprecedented case, and I can tell you that I am very fortunate to have had a legal team that helped me on this over the course of the last 2.5 years. I don't know where Mr. Capone is, and Mr. Fuchs. They are excellent writers, and we battled this from day one, and we were prepared from day one to try this case. Chase Brown has been an excellent help in terms of everything we've been doing. He is a rising star in this county, and my co-pilot Danielle Koish, she really put together that Fry hearing. That was such a monumental hearing here in New York State, and she's organized and came up with such crafty arguments during the course of this case. So I'm really grateful for their help. We really were, in my opinion, zealous. We did our best to be competent and effective during the course of this prosecution and the defense. One of the things that I was very mindful of and made a deliberate point is we attacked the evidence. We never attacked these young ladies, these victims. That was never our objective. We never said a bad word about them, and they ran into some tough times. They were all beautiful young ladies. Their mothers, their daughters, their sisters, I can go on and on. But it was never about attacking them. It was always about attacking the evidence. So I think that this today gave hopefully some peace and some closure to the family members. This case is over from our standpoint. You heard the prosecutor indicate there will be no further prosecutions in exchange for his plea of guilty, as well as his cooperation with the Federal Bureau of Investigations, the Behavioral Analysis Unit. I respect the press and their role in the criminal justice system, so I'm happy to take some questions to the best that I can at this point.
What changed and when? That's what we're trying to
Yeah,
figure out.
well,
We have insisted on
I can't give you our conversations that are confidential, but I will say to you that there came a point in this defense where Rex said, I want to plead guilty. And it was at that point when we really had an objective of protecting his interests.
Sure, but can you give us some
I can't.
timeline on that?
No, because that's all confidential. I'm not going to get into the time frame.
Is he cooperating with the FBI?
I'm sorry?
Has he spoken to Asa?
Has he spoken to Asa? I don't know. You'd have to ask Asa.
Mike, can you talk a little bit about the parameters of the FBI cooperation? Because we couldn't really hear you on the mic well when you mentioned that in court. And what does that mean for a potential federal prosecution of Rex, if at all?
Yeah, I'm not at liberty to discuss any of that. All I can say is he has an obligation to cooperate fully and completely with the Federal Bureau of Investigations Behavioral Analysis Unit. I can't get into anything further.
Anybody? Yes, sir.
This plea comes sometime after the judge ruled on DNA. Was that part of the calculation that there was just another obstacle in the way to try to prove his innocence versus pleading guilty?
Well, we don't have to prove innocence, obviously.
Well,
it's about, but I understand your question. Yeah, I mean, listen, there are a couple of things that were major decisions in this case from a strategic standpoint for the defense, in terms of likelihood of success at trial, so to speak. The judge's ruling on the Fry hearing was monumental. Yes, that's a big deal because if you remember, you have mitochondrial DNA and the statistical likelihood is not that great. I feel like I'm a broken record, but that was 2.5 years ago. We talked about that. But once that nuclear DNA comes into play, those statistics, as portrayed by this expert, the Astrea lab, they're off the charts. So that's a major part of how successful you're going to be at trial. Another major part is our motion to sever, which Ms. Koish wrote a great motion on that because we didn't think, we suggested that the cumulative effect would have been so overwhelming, and the court disagreed with us, and the court permitted all of the counts in the indictment to remain together. That's a big win for the prosecution.
Mr. Brown, you yourself told us many times that you believed he was not the guy. When did your thoughts on that change?
Well, my thoughts aren't important. At some point, he admitted responsibility to us and indicated that he wanted to proceed to trial. So I don't sit there and judge a case. Our objective and our job is to be zealous advocates for the client, right? That's what we do. We do it on every single case. A good lawyer is going to advocate for their client. That's what we've been doing from day one. My beliefs, and it's insignificant.
Mr. Brown,
yes, sir.
The hearing is often, these kinds of hearings are so clinical. Can you give us an understanding of his mindset coming in and whether he, without betraying confidences, may have said something that indicated a particular way he was thinking or feeling about this?
You're talking about this morning?
Yeah.
Well, this is not something that nothing has been done from the hip. We don't shoot from the hip on this case. This case, every single decision we've made has been calculated and thought out, and we've thrown it around hundreds of times. And the reason I say that is, we've been speaking to him and preparing him for today, and that's been ongoing for weeks.
Is he sorry?
I would hope so. I mean, I expect at sentencing he'll have something to say. I'll leave it at that.
Was it a sense of relief, you think, for him to admit this today?
I do. I think that was a huge sense of relief for him. I can't, I'm not in his position, obviously, and I never will be. But when you have that type of in your head and on your body and just, I think by admitting it, I think it's cathartic to some extent, sure.
Mike, can we expect you to get into more detail about how he did all of this at sentencing?
No.
What does the fact of the DNA evidence not being appealable do for other cases in this state?
I'm going to let Ms. Koish answer that because she really is now an expert on this area.
Yeah, so what we have in this Fry decision is a Supreme
Danielle,
Court
just stand
decision.
a little closer.
Okay?
Yeah.
It's a Supreme Court decision. Another Supreme Court justice could hear the same issues and either agree with Judge Mazie or disagree with Judge Mazie. It's not a controlling decision yet, okay? So I assume we're going to hear more. I think that this type of technology, now that the door was open, is going to be used more, and similar legal challenges are going to be raised. And it's up and until we get to the higher courts, what we call the appellate division over in Brooklyn or even our Court of Appeals, does that decision become binding. So Judge Mazie's decision certainly opened the door. We're going to see it, and I'm sure we're going to hear what other Supreme Court justices and other judges in New York think about the case. But as of right now, it's just a door-opening decision.
Mr. Brown, can you just clarify if there was an agreement? He's pleaded guilty to 7 counts. He also acknowledged an 8th murder, right? But then there's something about no future prosecutions. Does that mean if there were other victims found in Suffolk that there would not be prosecutions?
No, there will be no further prosecutions on these 8 victims.
And how did the 8th one come about? Like, how did that end up being part of it?
When he decided he wanted to plead guilty, we had that covered as part of his plea, and there'll be no further prosecutions as long as he cooperates with the Federal Bureau of Investigation's Behavioral Analysis Unit.
So is Rex maintaining that he has no other victims out there?
No, he's maintaining he has no other victims other than the 8, correct, yes.
When did Karen Brigada enter the conversation with you?
It's hard to say. I don't know. I don't have the timeline. I can't tell you. Obviously, she came into play. Her as a victim came into play at some point. I can't tell you exactly when.
Weeks, months?
I don't know.
How much was the...
Mr. Brown, could you tell us if his family might have helped him make this decision?
I think that they speak, and I think that there was, I can tell you that, I'll say this, certainly several of his concerns, he had many about why he didn't want to go to trial and plead guilty. He certainly wanted to save the families of the victims the ordeal of going to trial, and coupled with saving his family that ordeal. So I know that there was conversations during the course of this defense between his family members and himself in regards to that, yes.
Did he not want his family members, his wife and his daughter, to know the details of the murders that he committed?
I would assume that. I'm sure, again, there was conversations about having them avoid the ordeal of a trial. It was definitely a factor. Yes.
How much of a factor was the federal charge?
Okay, we've been listening to Rex Heuermann's attorney, Michael Brown. A lot of questions can't be answered due to client attorney privilege, but doing the best he can to answer some of the questions that he had to field.
And we are now hearing from Rex Heuermann himself this morning. Moments ago, we heard from Heuermann speaking to the judge before pleading guilty. Let's listen.
Have you discussed this case with your attorney?
Yes, I have.
Have you had enough time to discuss this case with your attorney?
Yes, I have.
After discussions with your lawyer, you feel it's in your best interest to plead guilty rather than go to trial?
Yes, Your Honor.
Are you satisfied with the manner in which your attorneys represented you in this case?
Yes, I am.
I must say that the attorneys on both sides of this case have been excellent, unbelievable lawyers. Do you understand that by pleading guilty to a charge, that is the same as if you had gone to trial and been found guilty of that charge?
Yes, Your Honor.
Do you understand that by pleading guilty, you're waiving a number of very important rights?
Yes, Your Honor.
As you're hearing from Rex Heuermann there for the first time, pleading guilty to 7 counts of murder, sentencing now set for June 17th.
All right, now we want to go back out to the courthouse. And Carolyn Gussoff, Jennifer McLogan are there. And Carolyn, we interrupted you earlier because we had to go to a press conference, but continue telling us what you were telling us.
Yeah, absolutely. What you just heard, Rex Heuermann's tone, his confident voice, that's exactly what continued for the next half hour. That was pretty extraordinary as we're talking about, diabolical crimes. He was just very matter of fact. It was very rapid fire questioning by the prosecutor. District Attorney Ray Tierney himself started questioning under oath Rex Heuermann and asking him specifics about each crime, about each of the victims. And to each question, he asked, did you murder this victim by name? And he would answer yes. And what was the means, what was the manner of the murder? And he would answer strangulation. For each of the 7 women in the indictment that he was charged with, and then again for the 8th, he didn't have to articulate that because that was not a crime he was charged with, but he did admit that he also killed her by strangulation. The only details really that came out in this rapid fire plea was a couple of the elements they had to prove for first-degree murder. In order to prove first-degree murder, you have to have a grouping more than, I believe it's more than 2 murders, and they have to be the same manner. And so in order to prove that, he had to admit to questions about how they were lured in by burner phone, he admitted, and that he bound them with burlap around the midsection and their heads and dismembered them and put their remains in a manner that would be concealed along Ocean Parkway near Gilgo Beach. So those were really the only details, and while these details were spoken in the packed courtroom, family members of the victims, you could see wiping away tears. It was very emotional. So even though it was very mechanical for Rex Heuermann and the district attorney, how quickly it all went, it was really such an incredible moment to have these details and a confession that some people thought we would never have. And in the end, the only thing really that the prosecution conceded, because there's certainly no time that this was not a plea deal in the sense that there'll be any shorter sentence, but that there'll be no further prosecution in any of these 8 cases. And as you heard, that Rex Heuermann has also agreed to cooperate with the FBI's behavioral science team. They'll study him to learn, what makes a person do these awful things. And really an incredible day for me and for Jennifer McLogan. We've both been covering this literally for decades.
And our shock the first day when he was arrested up till when the shock again when we find out he's pleading guilty.
Right, and never expected. And it's interesting, the questions will linger as to why he did it, but his attorney just spoke about, wanting to spare the details for himself and his family.
Correct. It's been a very dramatic day here. We're saying it's a huge case. It has haunted Long Island for so long, since the bodies of the first so-called Gilgo 4 were discovered in Ocean Parkway 2010, buried in those shallow graves. And of course, on the 4th floor of this courthouse behind us, Rex Heuermann finally giving some resolution, admitting to 7 and then 8 of these victims. He walked in, he entered the courtroom. As you heard him speak a moment ago, he spoke confidently. It was chilling, and we have some videotape now that we want to share with you. Until now, 62-year-old Rex Heuermann had publicly denied any involvement in the killings. A trial was expected to begin in September, facing life without parole if convicted. But something changed since he's been in a solitary jail cell. Was it sparing his own family? Was it his conscience, his health, getting out of solitary confinement? We hope to learn some answers in the hours to come. Nabbed in July of 2023 outside his Manhattan architectural consulting business, his shocking arrest, and the gruesome, sadistic details of a serial killer quickly became worldwide news.
Rex Heuermann is a demon that walks among us, a predator that ruined families.
Based on a tip of a unique vehicle linked to Heuermann, the Gilgo Beach Homicide Task Force tracked his cell and burner phones, used advanced DNA testing from a leftover pizza crust and hair strands found on multiple victims' bodies buried from Gilgo Beach to the East End. A planning document for how best to kill and evade detection was found in Heuermann's basement. Heuermann's admitting to all 7 women's murders he was charged with, plus an 8th, Karen Vertaga, that had been unsolved until now. Vertaga, a Manhattan mother of 2, whose remains were found west of Gilgo Beach and on Fire Island more than a decade apart. Attorney John Ray represents victim Valerie Mack's son, who filed a wrongful death lawsuit yesterday, naming Heuermann's ex-wife and daughter, too.
His family knew, or should have known, what was going on in that basement. These girls were being tortured and slaughtered in his own house, a 1,343 square foot house.
The family attorney firing back, calling the claims unfounded, denying Heuermann's daughter and ex-wife had any involvement at all. Prosecutors said murders occurred when the Heuermann family was out of town.
My thoughts and prayers are with the victims and their families. Their loss is immeasurable, and the focus should be on them at this time and moment. I ask that you give some privacy to my family as they navigate through this very difficult time.
We found it really fascinating that the behavioral analysis unit of the FBI is asking and demanding, and he will proceed to speak with them. Rex Heuermann's future, we're finding out now in what prison he will go to. We'll find that out on June 17th.
Right.
And
part of it also, Jennifer, anybody could speculate about why he did this, but the last almost 3 years for him, he has been in a single cell, almost solitary confinement, 23 hours a day. That will not be the conditions when he goes upstate to prison. You know, that could have played a part as well.
We talked about that too, the loneliness factor or the bragging factor.
Right.
Being a big cheese in that pond.
So he'll be, studied. That's really incredible by the FBI for years to come. I was struck by how matter of fact he just rattled off the guilties in court. One after the other, 7 guilties as the judge asked him, how do you plead, as he changed his plea. And, it sounded like he could have been just in an architecture meeting. I mean, it was really no emotion, confident, loud, and ready to be done with this.
He certainly lived a double life, and if we're to believe the family, they knew absolutely nothing about it. Prosecutors have said they were all out of town when these gruesome murders and tortures took place in the basement of his home. He even had a whole manifest written about it. Of course, one lawsuit's been filed yesterday. Will there be more to come against Asa Ellerup and her daughter, because they have money now from the documentaries that they have cooperated in?
And it's interesting that his defense attorney just complimented the prosecutors. If not for the strength of this case, today never would have happened.
And Chris and Cindy, as we throw it back to you, we wanted to also compliment Rodney Harrison, who's part of our team today, because of course it was under his watch, he's being humble, that this whole case began to be solved.
All right, ladies, thank you very much. For Nassau County residents, it's been a long road to the end of this case.
Allie Bauman is getting reaction from Heuermann's Massapequa Park neighborhood. Allie.
Yeah, Cindy and Chris, it's kind of weird to be out here. The last time I was here was just about 3 years ago, right after Rex Heuermann was arrested, and this entire neighborhood was a zoo that day and for the days and weeks afterwards. I mean, the area outside of the house had been blocked off. There were dozens and dozens of news crews from all over the world here covering this case. And today it is eerily quiet. A few more photographers and crews just started to trickle in, but it has been incredibly quiet this morning as the neighborhood has been waiting with bated breath to find out what was going to be happening in court. Now, we have video from a little bit earlier today of Rex Heuermann's stepson coming out saying nothing as he went to go walk the dog a short time ago from the family's Massapequa Park home, a decaying red ranch house in the middle of this manicured suburban block, a house that has always stood out to neighbors as odd, especially because the owner, it was the acclaimed Manhattan architect Rex Heuermann. This community and all of Long Island has waited years to unmask the Gilgo Beach killer. Neighbors say they were confident of Rex Heuermann's guilt when he was arrested about 3 years ago and are glad to see he is changing his plea today.
I've been following it since day one. Yeah. And I know I'm crazy, but it's just amazing to me that this person lived here for so many years. And so many years it fell by the wayside. I think some people wanted to see him go to trial. I don't know that he's ever going to see the light of day, so I don't know that his plea matters.
I think he did the right thing, because if they go to court, it's going to be dragged on and on and on and on. Every time I go walking past down here, nobody's around, and I don't think nobody really wants to talk about it either. I feel sorry for the family too, because they weren't even around when he was doing all this. They were on vacations all the time.
And now some neighbors out here told us are also hopeful that they'll get their neighborhood back. I mean, for the past 3 years, this has been the center of this case has been this red home, and it has completely upended this neighborhood that, again, is a quiet residential suburban block. So some are hopeful that maybe the news crews stop coming now that he's pleaded guilty. We are now waiting to see if his ex-wife, his daughter, are going to be coming home. We haven't seen them come home yet, but we'll keep you posted. Cindy and Chris.
Right, Allie, thank you very much. Now to break down this case further, we're joined by 2 experts. Rodney Harrison, the former police commissioner for Suffolk County, who you've heard mentioned a number of times here over the past half hour or so.
And then for legal analysis, we are joined by trial attorney Rich Schoenstein. And Rich, we talked about how the investigation, continues, possibly more victims could be discovered. So what happens with Heuermann when that happens?
Well, the only resolution is for the 8 victims that were the subject of today. So if there are additional victims, which I think a lot of us think there probably are, and they're found, there could be additional charges. Those can still be pursued despite this plea.
In 2022, newly appointed Suffolk County Police Commissioner and former NYPD Chief Rodney Harrison promised the families of victims that he would bring those accountable to justice. That has happened today. This has got to be rewarding for you and your team for your years of work putting this case together and seeing these guilty verdicts today for these victims.
You know, one of the things that I was able to learn during my time frame at NYPD was the blueprint of solving investigations, and that's bringing all law enforcement agencies together. And there was a little bit of reluctancy, I'm going to be very, very honest with you, because of some of the past things that have happened inside that department. But getting everybody to work together, the Detective Lieutenant Kevin Byer that oversaw the task force, I want to make sure that he gets the appropriate acknowledgement, allowed this to be a rewarding day. And once again, as I shared this earlier, people that go into law enforcement, we do it for days like this. We do it to make sure that we bring some type of comfort, relief to families, but yet at the same time hold people accountable.
You knew you had your guy. Are you surprised that he finally admitted to it?
I am. I'm going to be honest with you, and there's a little part where he's getting a little bit of a pass by taking a plea because he doesn't want that public embarrassment. I'm not looking to say that that's necessarily something that I'm looking for, but there is a part where he's going to be a little bit relieved knowing that he doesn't have to deal with that public scrutiny.
Commissioner, thank you very much. Rich, thank you. And as we have said, Gilgo Beach serial killer Rex Heuermann has pleaded guilty to 7 counts of murder. We remember the women, the victims at the center of the case. 8 lives, each with a story, each deeply missed by the people who love them.
Sandra Castilla was 28 years old, a woman from Trinidad and Tobago whose life ended far from home. Maureen Brainerd Barnes, a 25-year-old mother of 2 from Norwich, Connecticut, worked to keep a roof over her family's head, returning to sex work after falling behind on bills.
Melissa Bartholomew, 24, from Erie County, was living in the Bronx trying to make ends meet. Megan Waterman, just 22 years old, from Maine, a mother to a 3-year-old daughter whose family grew worried when she suddenly stopped checking in.
Amber Costello, 27, from West Babylon. Her family believed she was in treatment and didn't know she was missing until it was too late. And Valerie Mack, 24, living in Philadelphia, a mother whose disappearance was never reported after a life that included time in foster care.
Jessica Taylor, 20 years old, living in Manhattan when her life was cut short. And Karen Vergata, 34 years old, from Manhattan, who went unidentified for nearly 3 decades, known only as Jane Doe until science helped identify her.
8 women, not just victims, but daughters, mothers, and people who matter, people who had lives that were taken way too soon, cut short by this madman. Stay with CBS News New York for the very latest developments in the Gilgo Beach murder case. We expect to hear from the families of the victims at some point this afternoon. We think around 2 o'clock. We will, of course, bring you a special report later today at 4 p.m., wrapping up today's extraordinary events.
Thank you for watching CBS News New York at noon. I'm Cindy Hsu.
And I'm Chris Raggi. The news continues now on our streaming channel. Have a great afternoon. Thanks for being with us. We want to pause to say hello to viewers tuning in now to our noon newscast.
We have been following breaking news. Gilgo Beach serial killer Rex Heuermann just changed his plea in a Long Island courtroom, pleading guilty to 7 counts of murder and admitting to an 8th murder. Good afternoon. I'm Cindy Hsu.
And I'm Chris Raggi. We thank you for being with us now on the air and streaming on CBS News New York. Let's get right to our breaking news as we continue to follow these developments. More than 30 years after his first murder, Rex Heuermann, a 62-year-old architect from Massapequa, pleaded guilty this morning to killing 7 women and admitting to killing an 8th.
Now here's a look at his victims. They are Maureen Brainerd Barnes, Melissa Bartholomew, Amber Costello, Megan Waterman, Sandra Castilla, Jessica Taylor, and Valerie Mack. And Heuermann also agreed to plead guilty to the death of Karen Vergata. He has not been charged in her murder yet. We want to take a live look outside Suffolk County Court in Riverhead right now. We're waiting to hear from several key players in this case, and we'll bring them to you live as it happens.
But we want to begin with our reporters who have been covering this case since the very beginning, Carolyn Gussoff and Jennifer McLogan, who are live at the courthouse in Riverhead for us right now. Ladies.
Yes, Chris and Cindy, really a stunning moment, a historic moment in court. We just got out, even though it was expected, to hear from Rex Heuermann, to hear his voice, to hear him saying guilty, guilty, guilty 7 times as he changed his plea, really in a confident, strong voice with no emotion, in a packed courtroom. It was standing room only. It was filled not only with media but law enforcement who have worked on this case, this enduring mystery for decades, and also family members of Rex Heuermann and several dozen family members of the victims, and there were tears in court. We didn't get the details that you sometimes get with.
Carolyn, I hate to do this. I hate to do this.
Okay,
Carolyn,
go ahead.
I'm so sorry. I know this is the second time I've had to cut you off, but we want to go to Rex Heuermann's attorney right now.
No, I see him. I know where you're going.
We'll get right back to you. We'll get right back to you.
Enter a plea of guilty. Now, as attorneys, we've counseled him, we've advised him, but that decision is ultimately up to the defendant. He controls his case, and that's his prerogative, that's his right, and that's what happened here today. When Rex decided that he wanted to accept responsibility and didn't want to proceed to trial, from a defense standpoint, we then pivoted and did our best to protect his interest. That included the fact that he's going to cooperate with the Federal Bureau of Investigations, the Behavioral Analysis Unit, and as you heard the district attorney, there will be no further prosecutions in regards to these 8 victims. The district attorney's office of Suffolk County did an excellent job. I'll commend them. They deserve all the accolades. I've been reviewing this case for over 2.5 years. I can't express to you, and I know we've talked about it on many different dates, the volume of evidence and discovery. They did a great job. They really did a great job of gathering the evidence, going down. They went down hundreds of rabbit holes. And when you look at the amount of evidence and you connect the dots, they really did a great job. And I'm talking about the investigators, the detectives, their experts, the assistant district attorneys. So I'm sure that the families of the victims are very grateful to the district attorney, and the people of this county should be as well. This was an unprecedented case. And I can tell you that I am very fortunate to have had a legal team that helped me on this over the course of the last 2.5 years. I don't know where Mr. Capone is, and Mr. Fuchs. They are excellent writers, and we battled this from day one, and we were prepared from day one to try this case. Chase Brown has been an excellent help in terms of everything we've been doing. He is a rising star in this county, and my co-pilot, Danielle Koish, she really put together that Fry hearing. That was such a monumental hearing here in New York State. And she's organized and came up with such crafty arguments during the course of this case. So I'm really grateful for their help. We really were, in my opinion, zealous. We did our best to be competent and effective during the course of this prosecution and the defense. One of the things that I was very mindful of and made a deliberate point is we attacked the evidence. We never attacked these young ladies, these victims. That was never our objective. We never said a bad word about them, and they ran into some tough times. They were all beautiful young ladies. Their mothers, their daughters, their sisters, I can go on and on. But it was never about attacking them. It was always about attacking the evidence. So I think that this today gave hopefully some peace and some closure to the family members. This case is over from our standpoint. You heard the prosecutor indicate there will be no further prosecutions in exchange for his plea of guilty, as well as his cooperation with the Federal Bureau of Investigations, the Behavioral Analysis Unit. I respect the press and their role in in the criminal justice system. So I'm happy to take some questions to the best that I can at this point.
What changed and when? That's what we're trying to
Yeah,
figure out.
well,
You had insisted on
I can't give you our conversations that are confidential, but I will say to you that there came a point in this defense where Rex said, I want to plead guilty. And it was at that point when we really had an objective of protecting his interests.
Sure, but can you give us some
I can't.
timeline on
No, because that's all confidential. I'm not going to get into the time frame.
Is he cooperating with the FBI?
I'm sorry?
Has he spoken to Asa?
Has he spoken to Asa? I don't know. You'd have to ask Asa.
Mike, can you talk a little bit about the parameters of the FBI cooperation? Because we couldn't really hear you on the mic well when you mentioned that in court. And what does that mean for a potential federal prosecution of Rex, if at all?
Yeah, I'm not at liberty to discuss any of that. All I can say is he has an obligation to cooperate fully and completely with the Federal Bureau of Investigation's Behavioral Analysis Unit. I can't get into anything further. Anybody? Yes, sir.
This plea comes sometime after the judge ruled on DNA. Was that part of the calculation that there was just another obstacle in the way to try to prove his innocence versus pleading guilty?
Well, we don't have to prove innocence, obviously. It's about, but I understand your question. Yeah, I mean, listen, there are a couple of things that were major decisions in this case from a strategic standpoint for the defense, in terms of likelihood of success at trial, so to speak. The judge's ruling on the Fry hearing was monumental. Yes, that's a big deal because if you remember, you have mitochondrial DNA and the statistical likelihood is not that great. I feel like I'm a broken record, but that was 2.5 years ago. We talked about that. But once that nuclear DNA comes into play, those statistics, as portrayed by this expert, the Astrea lab, they're off the charts. So that's a major part of how successful you're going to be at trial. Another major part is our motion to sever, which Ms. Koish wrote a great motion on that because we didn't think, we suggested that the cumulative effect would have been so overwhelming, and the court disagreed with us, and the court permitted all of the counts in the indictment to remain together. That's a big win for the prosecution.
Mr. Brown, you yourself told us many times that you believed he was not the guy. When did your thoughts on that change?
Well, my thoughts aren't important. At some point, he admitted responsibility to us and indicated that he wanted to proceed to trial. So I don't sit there and judge a case.